Today on Biblical Higher Ed Talk, I sit down with Rick Rhoads, president of BCM International, to talk about his work in ministering to children and the church through global educational efforts. Thank you for tuning in today. I'm your host, 𝗕𝗂𝗶𝗹𝘁, president of 𝗕𝗶𝗀𝗀𝘁, and honored to have as our guest this week a dear friend of mine. We'll talk about where he's from and what he's doing, but Rick Rhoads and I go, oh boy, we go way back, probably so far back that we have stories about each other that we probably could share but shouldn't share. We actually attended our undergraduate education together, and have just through the years, God has just blessed us in the opportunity to work together for several years, and now we're working at two different organizations. But Rick and I have always stayed in contact, and he's the president of BCM International. And if you're not familiar with BCM International, we're going to talk a little bit about that here today and the work that they do. And Rick is leading a global effort to minister to children and the church through education. And they have a very long history of providing and developing curriculum to reach children with the gospel message of Jesus Christ. And so I've invited Rick in to talk about that and to talk about what he's seeing globally and how biblical and Christian higher education can partner in the work of BCM International. Rick, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here, Philip. Thanks so much for the invite and the warm welcome. And yeah, we do have many years together, and some that we probably will have good laughs about.
Yeah,
maybe we talk about here today. But
yeah,
it's an honor to be part of BCM International, and honored to be here with you today.
Great. So why don't you just start off, give us a high level overview in case our listeners don't know who BCM International is. Tell us kind of what work are you involved with?
Sure. So BCM International is 88 years old. It started in 1936, and it was a missionary by the name of 𝗪𝗪, who was a missionary to the Philippines. And her home city was Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And she was home on furlough, and she was working with some children. And in the middle of the time she was working with children, one of the children looked at her and said, what do you do in the Philippines? And after she explained what she did with children in the Philippines, the young child looked back at her and said, well, why don't you do that here? And that actually was the prompt from that child, which started BCM International. And in those days, in 1936, it was known as the Bible Club movement.
Yeah.
And it started in Philadelphia, and then that moved across the world. It was a worldwide global phenomenon that ended up spreading across the world and currently serves in 56 countries. And as it progressed throughout the years, it was predominantly children's ministry in the beginning, and particularly reaching children with the gospel message. But when it got into Asia, they saw massive groups of children coming to Christ, but there was no churches to send those children into with predominantly Buddhism, Hinduism, and Islamic religions really practicing there. And so it was in the late 1970s, early 1980s, BCM International began planting churches as well. 17,000 churches later across Asia, Africa, and parts of Europe. We are still primarily focused on children's ministry and discipleship and teens ministry, but we really are a church planting organization as well. And so all of these years later, we have 42 camps in 32 countries. We have around 5,000 churches that are BCM churches. BCM is largely kingdom oriented, so we often say we measure success by how many we send out. So many churches we've planted, we've handed over to other organizations or independent organizations throughout the world that could manage or even make disciples and multiply them better. We also have 6 orphanages in 6 different countries, 4 Bible colleges and Bible institutes in 4 different countries, and then are providing equipping and training for lay leaders around the world in 98 countries and 32 languages. So we're just really, I look at it's an honor to be a part of this significant work with nearly 17,000 workers in 56 countries. And what God has continued to do and multiply over those 88 years is just kind of mind blowing and staggering. I've often said when I use the numbers of BCM International, I always undercut them because I don't ever want to exaggerate them.
Yeah.
But this is truly one of those global flat level organizations that our whole emphasis is to equip leaders to multiply, who will in turn multiply other leaders and train other leaders. And so our passion really is we're training people in their countries to reach their countries, not really sending Westerners overseas anymore, but really equipping people in their various portions of the world to reach those portions of the world.
Yeah. And what a legacy story. You think back to 1936 and the founder, if she had been able to have a picture of, 2025, I bet you in her mind, she never could have imagined what it has become. And I think it's such a beautiful picture of, that's what God does with our work today. He'll multiply it. That shouldn't be our worry, right? But in her case, all she was she's just being faithful to the call and responding and meeting a need. And then God takes that and multiplies it in so many big ways.
Yeah, so powerful.
Yeah. Kind of an aside story there. My parents are missionaries, and I grew up outside the Philadelphia area. And it was North African Mission, Arab World Ministries, and they actually shared space. It was the BCM building in Upper Darby where they had their offices for a number of years. So I just remember as a kid being at BCM. And I think there was like a little storefront, and they sold curriculum. So, for local churches and that sort of a thing. So kind of a fun little connection. One of the things you mentioned, it's a flat organization. We'll probably get that in our conversation, where it definitely benefits the work, but there are also some challenges as you're working in that kind of a context with a flat structure. So talk about that. You're 3 years into it, and that's enough time for you to get past the initial kind of get your feet on the ground, figure out what is this organization and what role do I play in that organization. So long enough to be there and actually to do some things. What have been some of your early successes? And then we'll talk about what have been some of the challenges.
Sure. Thank you, Philip. Yeah, I would say one of the early successes was taking the time to build global trust. I think in such a large, flat level organization, you have many, many leaders spread out throughout the globe. So we have 5 regions with regional leaders, and then we have another 56 national directors across the globe. And you can imagine with the amount of people, leaders, culture, and vision, just really taking time to build trust. And so stepping in that first year, I had some dear mentors that were guiding me, and they just kept saying, build trust, take time, ask a lot of questions, listen a lot, and just serve the people. Just love them with the love of Jesus and show up and be present. And so in these first 3 years, what we did was a kind of very intentional do kind of a global presidential tour where we showed up in different countries and different regions, and really taking time to just be present with those leaders and listen what's been going well, what hasn't been going well. And ultimately what I would continue to do is say, how can we serve you better? What can we do in this space to help you reach more individuals, for you to be personally, spiritually healthy, that your marriage can be healthy, your family can be healthy, and how can we serve you well? And there was quite a few years ago, I heard the analogy, none of us are self-made men or women. We come into an organization in a period in time and space, and we rest on the shoulders of all these dear people, amazing men and women of God that have come before us. And, the organizations we all serve in, they wouldn't even exist if these people hadn't stepped into time and space and followed the call of God to do what they're doing. And so to respect the people that came before us deeply and look at their strengths and weaknesses and realize that, in a sense, we hold the mission and vision of this organization and the leadership for a period of time. And I had this mentor say to me, just hold it with your hands wide open, serve the people well. because someday you're going to hand the baton off to the next person. And they can say, yeah, they're going to evaluate and say, boy, Rick was really strong at this, and maybe he was really weak at that. And he said, in the same way, with humility and presence, respect those who've come before you. And so I had the opportunity to have a great relationship with the sixth president of BCM International, Dr. 𝗪𝗵𝗲𝗍. He's a phenomenal mentor and friend. And so I invited him to stay on the president's team and become an international representative. And then I also invited him, if he was willing, if he would travel with me for the first year, where he has all of these global relationships. And I said, if we could show up in country and be there to model the leadership passing baton and leadership succession well, if we could model that for people, man, that would be an incredible honor if you'd be willing to do that. And so we did that.
I'm curious, Rick, I'm curious about that piece of it. Was that a more important element because of the international component? Like, it's one thing, here in the US where, you have the previous leader engaging with, sometimes it's the donor basis, the relationships it's helping. But in this case, how sensitive were you doing it because it was a multicultural spanning so many different countries? Did that play into it?
Yeah. No, great question, Philip. I think it plays into it significantly. Obviously, if you were just U.S. based or here at home, you'd want it anyway. And that'd be kind of maybe a one-off, or you would have time together. But because when you show up in all these different countries in a global structure, what happens is, I started here in the U.S., the home base. We have a home office, and you kind of step in and everybody's getting to know you. You're doing team building. You're kind of setting a new vision. You're getting to know people. And, that's a process that all of us as leaders, you and I both, Philip, and also those who are listening here today, you all have experienced that. Like, it takes time to build that trust. But every time I realized we get off a plane in a different country, we were starting from ground zero and repeating that trust building process, because in India alone, we've got 400 team members. We've got, our own office in India, BCM offices with a national director. So you're meeting this team that you've never met before, and you're lifetime building trust each place. Now repeat that over for 56 countries. So it's a significant piece. And Dr. 𝗪𝗲𝗍 was an amazing mentor. And I would say this too, you can't do it with everybody. You have to have a leader who is passionate and humble and cares more about the organization than their own ego. And Dr. 𝗪𝗲𝗍 has modeled that so well. And frankly, I've been taking notes because it's what I love to do for whoever comes after me. And I often mention that and say, hey, in leadership succession, I hold this for a period of time. I'm stewarding the work of God for this period of time. And my goal is someday, when I'm still fresh, I'm going to hand it off to somebody else who's even fresher and younger, because I've got other things in life I want to go do. So,
Yeah. And with an organization that's in 50, you said 56 countries?
56,
56 countries. I don't think you visited all 56 countries in these last 3 years. So how do you make selections? How do you prioritize where you do go and visit and engage with team members in various countries?
Sure. Yeah. So we sat down the first couple months and made kind of a strategic plan for the first 2 years. And part of that strategic plan was looking at where some of the larger works we have that are more significant, where places we could also do kind of a regional conference where we could pull other countries together. So instead of going to 10 different or 15 different African countries, could we do a conference in Africa, have the majority of those teams come to that conference, then I could come to that conference and I could have maximum impact with those people. The other thing we did put in there were where are places that are part of the strategic vision that really need you to show up lifetime and kind of speak into that strategy vision for the future. And then there was also some other crisis management places that if we don't get there now, there's a possibility we could lose it altogether. And I think in a flat level horizontal movement, the strength is it creates maximum growth. and I think all of us know this in our organizations. When you can empower people and release them and say, hey, go make disciples, go build orphanages, go plant churches, they'll actually do it. And it's amazing. You empower people in country. But what happens then is, because you've given so much freedom, it's really hard to find that right balance between systems and processes and keeping them on vision and on task. So at times, even though this multiplication is amazing, this type of movement, and honestly, I'm wired this way. I love it. As compared to high control systems, that's not who I am. So I love this. But there's times you have to show up and kind of re-guide that, bring it back on vision, back on task.
Yeah. So what would you say has been that you're willing to share your biggest leadership challenge that you faced over the last 3 years? Yeah.
So I'll give you two of them. One is related to what I just mentioned. I would look at, say, in BCM International for its 88 years, it is truly one of about 5 or 6 of these global flat level organizations that exist that really have just expanded through growth and development. And so that's the strength of it. The weakness of it is that we probably have less systems than we should have. So part of the challenge is on a daily basis, you'll get something that comes in and you kind of smile when you get it. And then you're saying, is there not a system, policy, or structure for this? And usually the answer is no. So it's finding the right, I keep saying this is a season of systems development where this beautiful global flat level horizontal organization that empowers countries to make disciples, plant churches, and reach children. And we hand all kinds of freedom and flexibility over to them. But we're in this season where we need to create just the right thin line of systems and structures and policy that actually help us flourish and grow to the next level. But I always say this to people, but we don't want to create so many that we kill the thing, because you could kill this beautiful freedom and organic movement if you put too many systems on it.
Yeah.
And part of that, I'd say, is because of how large it is and how spread out it is. One of the biggest challenges I've had, and this is something, Philip, that just really has stretched my faith. There's a crisis potentially, not every day, but almost every day, or every other day, that happens in the organization just because of the expanse of it. And that isn't always human related. Like, it could be, hey, this leader isn't getting along with that leader and something's been done. Sometimes it's natural disaster oriented. Sometimes it's war oriented. So we have teams, in Myanmar right now, in Burma. So we have a significant church planting effort. We have a Bible Institute there. We have orphanages there. And those folks are serving among civil war. Most of you know and have watched the news as well. Then they had the significant earthquake at the end of March. So we do a lot of working alongside other people in the neighborhoods, villages, and doing rescue relief work, food relief work, disaster relief. We have a significant team in the Ukraine that are ministering to children, running camps, have multiple orphanages there. We had an orphanage in 𝗪𝗵𝗄𝗵. So there's a lot of significant crises that happen consistently. I'll just be honest with you. It has stretched my faith in a significant way, where on a daily basis you're having to weigh into, a person's about to go behind enemy lines, or a person's going up to minister to people who are on the front. Or we have a young lady who said, there's so many children that aren't being reached behind lines in the civil war in Myanmar. That's where I'm going. And, I've learned in my short period of time in this role, I've never asked somebody to go do that. But the faith of these individuals that are dear brothers and sisters and colleagues of mine, man, they stir me at a deeper level of faith that sometimes I'm like, I don't have that. And they're challenging me. So every day or every other day, there's a crisis somewhere, but every day because of the way we're set up as an organization, there's some miracle that happens every day. We don't use that word much here in the West anymore because we have so many systems. We have organization. We don't necessarily need to have God act for us on that behalf. But in these places all around the world, we're seeing them every day. And it's deeply challenging to my faith. And God's continuing to say to me, I need more of you.
Yeah. It's great. There are a couple leadership lessons I'd love to draw out of those responses. One of them is the difference between tweaking systems and doing the work, right? There's a tension that exists, and I've seen folks in our academic settings at our institutions who get fixated on systems, and systems are they're good. You can't function without a system and a process and a procedure and policy. So I certainly don't want to undermine the importance of those things, but those are simply means to an end. And having a right balance of understanding how much should I tweak the system versus actually doing the work. And I think that's something that as leaders we're constantly battling, because it's safe to play with systems, right? You're an iteration removed from the work, right? You're not getting your hands dirty. You're playing with a system and then tweaking a system again and tweaking a system again versus okay, here's a system. We're going to function. Are there flaws to it? Yep, there sure are, and we can fix them as we go. But at the end of the day, we got to block and tackle. We actually got to do the work, and I think that's a critical leadership lesson there. The second one that I think is just so well stated with you in a profound way is that leaders make decisions, and whatever level of responsibility that you have in your organization, as a leader, you're making decisions. As you grow in your leadership, the impact of those decisions continues to grow. And I think you illustrated that well, where, you're having to make decisions that, aren't I'll just use colors of carpet somewhere, right? The decisions you're making have significant consequence, life and death kinds of situations. And I think it's a great lesson to, as you're young in your leadership, know how to make the right decisions, regardless of how big or small the consequence is. The consequence ought not to drive, a cavalier attitude. You approach that decision carefully, because if you do that, God gives you more and more responsibility, and you grow in your leadership. And now you're going to be in a leadership position where you're drawing on some of those skills of good decision making in the small decisions when you're having to deal with some of these bigger ones.
Really well said, Philip. And you and I served together for 15 plus years as academic leaders together. And there was a lot of weighty decisions in there, a lot of significant decisions. But you're right. I think it's this collective where things grow. Your leadership grows over time. And somebody came to me the other day, and we're making a decision on like a lease on a property and everything. And 2 days after we signed off on it, the thing that we were originally trying to, get came open finally. And everybody was kind of like, oh, we should go back. And I said, no. It was just one of those things where you learn from the past and you learn from the history of decision making. Like, don't go back, keep moving forward. This is the right thing. God, intended this for us. And I find those things, you're trusting deeply in God, because he's the one going before all of us on all of these things. And you even trust in the systems you create that God's in those things. But those things, some of those decisions, because of the collective nature of God developing you and your leadership through time, those become easier. What I find is the weighty ones where it has somebody's life in the balance. And I've found these days, I've got 2 or 3 mentors, I will call them immediately. Actually, one is the last president of BCM International, 30 plus years in global leadership. And he cares about the organization, and he cares about my soul more than he does his own ego. And that guy, Mac, I can't say enough about him, but I'll call him and say, what do you think about this? What am I missing? Am I about to walk off a cliff if I make this decision? What do I need to know about this people group, this culture? just gave me insights on it. And then prayerful discernment of trusting, going to God before it and really trusting him to give you wisdom through the Holy Spirit. And then my spiritual formation disciplines, I've had to ramp them up tremendously. And over the years, I've talked a lot about those, from doing spiritual retreats to the practice of examine, to silence and solitude, to reading scripture deeply and just sitting with it, to finding spiritual mentors and friends. But I've really had to ramp that up significantly, where I can't wait for a retreat someday. So I build practices into my day because of the amounts of stuff that's coming at me. You could find yourself in a place very quickly where you have decision fatigue, where your soul's just so tired, you're emotionally drained. And so I'm really careful to make sure those tanks don't get low, and that I'm consistently going back to those things that fill me through spiritual practices. And then a couple other things that I know for exercise. I love riding bike. I'm on my bike consistently. It's great think time. It's prayer time. But there's almost always a decision on my mind that needs to be dealt with, or a decision needs to be made real time within a day or two, that you really have to discipline yourself to continue to be growing in your leadership, but continuing to be in a place where you're being transformed by God, because the work you do is spiritual, whether you realize it or not. And the aspect of us going throughout our work and thinking we control everything is a myth.
Yeah.
And so our work, God's called us into for us to impact others, but he's called us into it to impact us. And I look back at the time, Philip, that you and I had at a college and university education. I thank God for that season and those years that we served together, because God was actively transforming my soul and depositing lessons in my life that I needed for then, but I also needed for future ministry and leadership that I didn't even know about. Yeah.
Boy, that's such a critical piece right there. And we have a lot of young leaders who listen to our podcast, and sometimes you can lose sight of the fact, it's my current reality is what it's going to be for the rest of my life. Right. But no, that's not the case. It's a chapter in this book that God has for you in this journey, and it's not going to last forever. So lean into that moment, learn whatever you can, because you're going to rely on that in the future. And I love how you emphasize the importance of being a healthy leader, a spiritually healthy leader, because that's the well from which we draw the energy to be able to do the work that we do. So our sector, we're in biblical and Christian higher education. What, knowing the work that BCM does, what are ways that our colleges and universities can partner in with BCM?
Yeah. And I know we've talked a lot about this formal, non-formal portion of education. And I'm the first one to say we absolutely need both. Both are incredibly important. And education is really the backbone of development all throughout world history. And it still is today. The interesting thing I've found with BCM International, it's changed my worldview in the last 3 years. I worked largely in the United States. In my last ministry with Lancaster Bible Capital Seminary, I did do additional work overseas and helping to develop campuses worldwide. So I've always had a passion, for the globe, and have done a lot of travel, spent a lot of time in the Middle East, in the area of education and church planning. So I have a passion for the globe. But the last 3 years made me realize that some of the statistics we've heard before, where, we've heard statistics of 95% of the majority world has no Bible college education, or 96%. And, I always, when I hear statistics, I'm like, I'm not sure if that's accurate or not. But the last 3 years, I get off a plane, and this is outside the United States and outside of Europe. I've been in 38 countries in the last 3 years. And poverty in the majority world looks almost identical everywhere you go. Whether it's South America, Africa, parts of Asia, Middle East, Eastern Europe, you do not have to get far outside that prominent city you land in on the plane.
Mm-hmm.
So you're in what I call the middle of nowhere. Mm. But there's population all over the place. And those statistics have really rang true. Mm. And I'll give a quick story, and then I'll connect the dots between education and how BCM and organizations like ours could work together. You get on a plane to fly to the Philippines, which I did last year. So the journey takes you from, Philadelphia here in the Northeast. You have a hub at Atlanta or Detroit. You fly to Seoul, South Korea, and then you go from Seoul to Manila, Philippines. And then we've got churches and camps all throughout the Philippines, but we were going to Mindanao, which is another 6-hour flight to one of the far southern islands in the Philippines. We get off at General Tso's airport, and our team's greeting us there. This is 42 hours of flying later. And so we get in a van with our team, and we're whisked off, and now we're on an 8-hour van ride to one of our churches. And we get there, and this pastor meets us and greets us, and he's got a church of about 100 individuals, and they've continued to make disciples and church plant. This guy's passionate for Jesus, but he's never had any theological or biblical education. He's never had any leadership training whatsoever. I mean, we're in the middle of nowhere in a southern island in the Philippines. This is not abnormal. This is a story I could tell you about almost every month in countries in Africa, countries all throughout Asia, India in particular. There is so much population that is majority world population, not like where we live here in the US or Canada or Europe, where we have all the amenities, but majority world population. And that pastor, if he even had the money to go to Bible college, if he had the access to, say, go to Manila Bible College, which would be a 6 to 7 hour flight, which he doesn't, if he went, he probably would never come back. Yeah. There would be nobody there to pastor his church. And so there's this word we use a lot where we call it access, access to education, funding, financial element to education, where there's a gap. And our majority world leaders, there's significant movement happening in the global South where we see profound amounts of people coming to Christ, profound amounts of people wanting to become part of being Jesus followers, but there's little education being provided to them. And so in this space between formal and non-formal, BCM fully sits in this world of really equipping and training non-formal leaders in the majority world on 5 different continents. And in that space, I would say there's great opportunity for those who are in formal education and are training people at a high level to have experiences within their education to experience the majority world. Because I had many years of education in the US and Europe, and I don't think I really ever experienced this on this level. Yeah. And so I've said recently to our team, what would it look like if we could partner with organizations that are formal education organizations just to give a 1 month, a 3 month, or a 6 month study abroad where they are showing up in a place where BCM International has churches, orphanages, or is doing children's ministry work. And if they just experienced for 1 month, 2, 3 months where they were part of that ministry, just observing, listening, hearing, noticing, learning culture, and just experiencing what a majority world context looks like. Yeah. And understanding that is actually, when we look at percentages of population on the earth, that's actually the larger percentage that exists out there.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, if we can get that in itself, what you just articulated there, and it doesn't take a whole lot of effort on the non-majority world to do that, right? In formal settings, it changes people's lives, when they actually just experience and see, what the vast majority of the world experiences, and how they can be part of the conversation without taking over the conversation of, how to reach what those particular needs are. Well, believe it or not, we are at the end of our episode. Rick, this has been a tremendous conversation. Just one last thing. I mentioned it earlier in the episode. So in our last minute, we have a lot of young leaders who are growing in their leadership experiences. Give us one leadership insight. I can now say that you're a seasoned leader. So from your experiences, what's a word of advice that you would give to those who are earlier on in the leadership journey?
Yeah. Give attention to the person in the room that doesn't have power, that doesn't have position, and doesn't have standing. And simply go be present with them, learn from them, and allow God to transform your life through them. The first trip I took with BCM International, I went to India, and we went to one of our BCM churches, and a crowd showed up. And for anybody who's been to India, it's a different world. It's a different context. I love cultures. I love learning about cultures. I love being in them. And I was learning live time. I spoke that day. I don't know if any of it made sense. And a woman came up to me afterwards that seemingly had little to no value, or, clothes were pretty tattered. And she stood in a line to meet me. When she got up to me, she said when she heard I was going to be speaking, she got on a bus and she rode 16 hours on a bus to come hear what I had to say. And it's in those moments, to any young leader in here, remember, these are the people that are going to teach you more about yourself and more about the kingdom of God than anyone else. And all I could say to her was, if you rode 16 hours on a bus in India, I need to hear what you have to say, not the reverse of that.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those moments where I just sense God was saying to me, man, I need more of you. You need to listen. God shows up. I mean, all throughout the New Testament, this is who he shows up through, not the people of power, position, or standing or title, but look for that person. Give them value, because we're all created equally in the image of God. And these people have so much to teach you. And that's predominantly who's teaching me these days. So that'd be the one nugget I would say hold on to.
What a great word. Rick, I really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your wisdom and experiences with us today.
Philip, it's been an honor to be here. Always good to see you, and grateful to be part of this.
And if you'd like to find out any more information about BCM International, in the show description, I've put the website. And if you'd like to get in contact with Rick to discover ways that your school, your college, your university can potentially partner with the work of what BCM International is doing, we'll put his contact information there as well. So until next time, stay kingdom focused.
The Biblical Higher Ed Talk podcast is proud to be a part of the Higher Ed Marketer Podcast Network. Discover even more conversations, resources, and tools to help you grow your institution at thehigheredmarketer.com, your go-to community for all things higher ed marketing and leadership.